the technology stuff, it's always interesting. That's why I have a special here tonight. Um, this this is David Gilmore, known as LDS Prepper. I'm very excited to have you here this evening, and we're going to spend some time with Andrew, and he is a EMP specialist, and also, oh, looks like we have a notice here. The marketing manager for Emp Shield. Emp Shield, I've watched your company grow. It has just been exploding, and it's like everybody's talking about it. You've got the former ICE agent, not agent, but ICE supervisor, whatever it was. I was watching the video the other night, and here comes this ICE guy and talking about how he's joined forces with you guys. Just amazing what's going on. So let me just, we're going to be talking about EMP. We've got a load of questions here this evening. We're going to go through as many questions as we have. We've got about 60 minutes. And so we're just going to be putting as much information in front of you as possible, letting you know, knowledge really helps with fear. The unknown is what's really scary. And so we're going to pull away these layers of onions. We're going to get rid of the myths. We're going to talk to you about reality. We're going to talk to you about, is there really such a thing as an EMP? What will it do? Can you really protect yourself? And what can you do? So I'm just going to just mention something here real quick. I'm going to let Andrew introduce himself here, but I've been preparing really hard consciously for 20 years. And what launched that was I was kind of playing the what if game, into myself. And I said, okay, so what would happen if there was a volcano? Well, I could get up and move, right? Hopefully get out of Dodge. What happens if there's an earthquake? Well, I've been in many earthquakes, and you just kind of write them out. What happens if there's a hurricane? I've been in 2 hurricanes, and you write them out if you can't get out of town. And then you got to deal with the aftermath. What if there's a tornado? I've been in the tornado bunkers twice in Missouri, listening to the tornado go over. But those things come and pass, and then there's a little bit of residual that you have to work with. But I thought, you know what? If there's an electrical magnetic pulse, that stops everything. It stops first responders. It stops hospitals, police, food production, possibly my electronics, my car, the ability to communicate, because the cell phones aren't going to be working. So it can be years and years and years. And so when I started thinking about what am I going to prepare for, what scenario, I decided it's going to be an EMP, because if I'm prepared for an EMP, then I'm going to be pretty well prepared for everything else. And so I'm tickled to death to have Andrew here this evening. And Andrew, would you just take a moment and introduce yourself to our guests here, to our listeners, and tell us a little bit about yourself before we start getting into the, what is EMP and so forth?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David, for having me on. And I'm excited. Hopefully a lot of people see this, and our goal is to raise awareness. And I think we're going to be able to do that with this. So I'm Andrew. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for Emp Shield. I am one of the owners of the company. We've been around for about 3 years. A little bit about myself. So 14 plus years in the military. The majority of that was in special operations. In fact, I focused on PSYOP while I was in the Army, and got out to come help start the company. And to be honest, I'm like a lot of people. When I got a phone call from Rowdy, he's our vice president, and who was telling me about the technology and what Tim, our founder, had invented, I actually had the same response that most people have, which is like, that's insane. There's no way that could even be real. I had the exact same response. It's very common. And so what they did is they actually ended up taking me to some of the military certified testing, and got introduced to some of our military counterparts and government counterparts. And I was sold. It's an incredible technology. And I'm like you, David. So, I mean, me and my group of friends have always been concerned about the risks of EMP. And I really agree with you that if you're prepared for EMP, you can pretty much be prepared for anything, because it is such a catastrophic event that we're going to get into the weeds on here in a little bit. But Again, just thanks for having me on, and I'm excited to be able to, get some information out.
Yeah, thank you very much. When I was in Houston and Hurricane Ike came through, we didn't have water, sewage. Imagine not having sewage for 2 weeks. What do you do there? Electricity, gas, people were out of power, utilities for 2 weeks, at least we were, and some people even longer. But I could use my landline and call somebody in Colorado, which is what I did.
Right.
And EMP, that's not happening. So I still felt somewhat connected to the world, but it's something, an EMP happens here, whether it's a coronal mass ejection or man-made, it's going to cover the majority, if not all of the US, some of Canada, Mexico, if we're actually being targeted directly. So go ahead and tell us what an EMP is. I know there's E1, E2, E3. How did that, what difference does that make? And is this different than just like getting hit really hard with a lightning bolt, or is it different from a CME? Go ahead, run with that.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm going to keep this a little bit basic in the beginning, just for those who are unaware. So EMP
that's me. Thank you. Yeah.
So EMP stands for electromagnetic pulse. And what it is, and I'll use a certain scenario, which is HEMP, high altitude nuclear EMP, because it's easy to understand. So what happens is an adversary or an enemy would launch a nuclear weapon up into the atmosphere, very high into the atmosphere. So we're talking 250 to 300 miles above the Earth, roughly around where the International Space Station is, to kind of give you an idea of how high up this nuclear weapon is actually going to explode. What's important to understand about these first two phases is this is where the microelectronics in most devices are going to be destroyed. And we'll explain a little bit more on why some have more risk than others, but everything is going to induce these freed electrons, and the majority of things have a very high likelihood of being destroyed. And we'll go more into that in a second. Now, the third phase is a little bit unique in the sense that it's not caused from the blast going downwards, but it's actually caused by the blast going out towards space. And what's happening
so let me just interrupt for a second,
Sure.
Andrew. So when you say three phases, is phase one first, and that happens, and then phase two happens, and then phase three happens, it's kind of in sequence? And how far apart is that sequence? If phase one happens, can I go grab my stuff and do something, or is it happening too fast for phase two and three?
Right. So phase one is going to happen in nanoseconds. It's almost instantaneous. And so if this is phase one and this is phase two, it's just happening just like this. So you're going to get wham, wham, nanoseconds, microseconds. And your first two phases are already done. It's already done the damage. Everything that's a conductor is inducing this energy.
So this is not something that you can hear on the radio. Hey, we've got a electrical storm coming, or an EMP, especially if this is man-made, because when you know about it, it's already over and everything's toast, or whatever.
That's right. And that's why being prepared for this type of event, which is very real. In fact, this is one of the most catastrophic weapons in any military's arsenal. And we'll go into detail on that too. But by the time it's happened, if you're not prepared, it's too late.
There's a great saying: when the time for action comes, the time for preparation is over.
Right.
And this is something, when it happens, if you're not prepared for it, you're just going to have to live with the consequences.
That's right. And it's not to scare people. I hope people don't get afraid by hearing this, but it's so important to understand it and to start at least making a plan to be prepared or getting prepared. Now, the E3 portion is different. So what's happening is that blast goes outwards towards space. And have you ever blown a bubble and a portion of the wall of that bubble is thinner, so it has like a secondary bubble? That's almost what happens with the E3 portion, is that blast pushes out towards the magnetosphere, but it's causing the magnetosphere to fluctuate because it likes to sit in a normal shape around the Earth. And that blast is causing it to go like this. And so what that creates is actually a low and slow charge at the ground level of the Earth. And this is the phase that's going to go anywhere from an hour to many hours. And it's going to have a low and slow charge building across the grid. And the reason that this is affecting the grid is because the grid is a large antenna. We're talking a mile, 10 miles, potentially hundreds of miles of antenna that over time is generating this charge, at 1 hour, then at 3 hours. And so at a certain point, it's got so much heat, so much charge, things in the grid like transformers, substations, other major components that are what we need to make that grid do what it does, which is to provide energy to us, they get destroyed. And this is if they weren't already destroyed from the first and second phase. So the E3 is just the last kind of, it's going to go for many hours, and it's just going to take out the power grid, period. And so that's basically the way an EMP works. They all happen in order, like you said. So E1, E2, E3. And it's just important for people to understand that the speed of this, it's going to occur so fast. But it's unlike a coronal mass ejection, which most people refer to as a solar flare. They're both different. In that scenario, you might have a heads up if somebody's willing to announce that it's going to happen. And we do get there's lots of news and lots of people out there that monitor what the sun does. So I'd presume that if we had a Carrington level event, which was in 1859, which was an incredibly large solar flare, I would hope that most people would become aware, and at least you'd have a little bit of time to prepare. It takes about 3 days for that plasma from the sun to actually reach the earth in the coronal mass ejection. Although it is traveling up to 1 million miles an hour. So it's traveling very fast. And that is something you have an announcement for potentially, but even at that point, you only have 3 days to prepare. And this is something that's more or less going to affect the power grid. It doesn't have the same, it's more like the E3 portion and not so much like the E1 and E2. So a Carrington event, solar style event, would mainly focus on the destruction of the grid. And there'd be other secondary consequences as well.
One of the questions that was asked, let me see if I can find it. One of the questions was, I was reading it earlier, something about, they were talking about the Carrington event and how that lit telegraph lines on fire. And they were wondering, and I'll find it here in a minute, but they were wondering, will the wiring in our house catch on fire?
Oh,
I
yeah,
thought that was a great question.
That's an interesting question. So it's important to understand that there is many different levels of a coronal mass ejection that can occur. That could be anywhere from very low to bigger than the Carrington event, which was the equivalent of millions of nuclear weapons going off in the atmosphere. But we'll use the Carrington event or larger. In that scenario, here's what we do know. This was such a large event that railroad tracks became warped. That's how much energy was being generated from this. So I believe there was reports of some fires. There was reports of telegraphs operating on their own without a battery pack. Of course, this is a long time ago, and so it's hard to get the validity of what's true and not true. But those things do seem to be possible because of the amount of energy associated to this type of event. So to answer your question, I think that there is a likelihood that something like that could occur where wires got hot enough, potentially. But I don't know if we actually have 100%. I don't know if there's anything exact in science that says yes or no. It just really depends on the level and scope of the event. But what we do know is that if that were to occur right now, it would destroy the grid. And I'm sure there would be lots of heat generated from the induction of that energy into the larger antenna systems like the power grid.
Yeah, that was submitted by Eugene. So just kind of in using small words for me, if an E1 happens, how does that affect me?
Sure. Yeah. So if an E1 occurs, your way of life, if an E1 occurs, that also means probably the other phases are going to occur as well. But your way of life.
Right, but I want to break down the difference between E1, E2, and E3 and how that affects me.
I understand. I see what you're saying. So when the E1 occurs, everything that you now use that has microelectronics is more than likely destroyed, damaged, or may not function anymore because it's going to induce energy. Some things may not. And so we'll kind of get into this. So, and I won't go too far down the weeds, but the size of the antenna of whatever it is that you're using that has microelectronics actually matters on how much energy it's inducing.
Okay, so I'm gonna do a lot of interrupting here. Okay.
Go. Yeah, it's great.
So you mentioned an antenna. I'm a ham radio operator. My wife's a ham radio operator. We're both licensed. I have my GMSR license, a GMRS license, and I've got a 17-foot antenna on a 20-foot pole attached to my house.
Right.
So is that going to be affected by E1, E2, E3?
So your antenna is going to serve as a large induction point of this energy. And so I'll clarify a little bit. When I say antenna, I mean anything that's a conductor of electricity too. So as an example, I think you're probably in your house right now. That house has Romex wiring all throughout the walls. And so basically your house is a very large antenna to induce this energy. Because it's a larger antenna, let's say you have your cell phone plugged into the wall. Your cell phone's probably going to be destroyed. Your computer's probably going to be destroyed. All of your communication systems, not just you like your cell phone, but also the antennas and the things that transmit the data that allow you to communicate via cell phone, those are going to be destroyed from potentially just from the E1 portion as it's inducing this.
Okay, so are they going to be destroyed because my house is created this antenna? Would they be better off unplugged?
So yes and no. So if you have Emp Shield, keeping them plugged in means they're actually protected. If you don't have Emp Shield and you have something that's very important, you don't want to be destroyed, in that scenario, you're probably going to want to put it into a Faraday cage, because even by itself, a computer by itself is still going to induce energy and potentially enough to be destroyed.
Okay, good. That's good, because I've got the Emp Shield on my AC coming in from the grid, and I got my Emp Shield on my DC for my solar panels. Coming into the inverters and charge controllers. So, and I've got the Emp Shield on my vehicle. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I don't have one on my ham radio. And I'm just, as going through your website tonight, I'm thinking, oh no, I don't have. And communications is huge. And after an emergency, something like this happens, you feel like you're the only person on the planet if you can't communicate, or especially with loved ones or emergency services. Here as a ham radio operator, I need it, I'm supposed to be part of that first responder group. And so I need to get an Emp Shield for my ham radio. I saw that you had the right connectors that I need, so I'll be back over to the store here. Okay, so if you have an Emp Shield and you want your appliances plugged into the wall.
That's right.
Okay, good. So I'll tell my wife, stop unplugging the toaster. I told her, don't plug in the toaster, but now we're going to plug in the toaster.
Keep it plugged in.
Now, can you explain, will an Emp affect everything that's electric or only things that are electronic? And how do we tell the difference?
That's a great question. So everything, whether it has electronics or not, if it's a conductor, it's going to induce energy. So if you have a lamp post out there that's metal, that lamp post is going to induce energy. But what you're looking at here, as far as the destruction of electronics, is things that have transistors, resistors, diodes, microprocessors that have silicon arsenide, anything that when it generates too much heat might crack or be destroyed. That's what's going to get the damage, because it's not designed to have that much energy inside of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So for example, I'm sitting here in my dining room, and over here is our Vitamix. And one reason why you got the Vitamix is because let's see, now I'm gonna publicly void my warranty, because I took it apart and there are no electronics in it. And that's why we get one of the main reasons why we have a Vitamix versus something else that has an LED or LCD display, like my microwave. I think that's electronic. My Instant Pot is electronic. So we're going to have some good smoothies for sure, because it's electric, not electronic. Am I understanding that?
Yeah, that's correct. So the damage is going to be primarily happening to transistors, resistors, diodes, microprocessors. That's not to say that certain components may not get hot enough to be destroyed too. So like if there's very thin connections, those could get hot enough to be destroyed. So there is a likelihood that some electronics that don't have the transistors, resistors, diodes, or silicon arsenide can still be damaged. It's just we know that primarily anything with microelectronics is going to have a very bad day after an EMP.
Okay, very good. I've got I have a newer computer, and my older computer is in a Faraday bag.
Good.
My backup ham radios that I'm not using are double bagged in Faraday bags.
Good.
My portable emergency solar generator is in a Faraday bag. So, and like I said, I double bag those. I think it's called nesting, in case there's a super EMP, which is, I guess, twice as bad as a regular EMP. And you need to double bag those. So if you're looking for EMP bags, you can go to ldsprepper.com/EMP bags, and that links to my son's website. And he has an EMP bag company, and there has the mil specs on it and everything. I know that we'll just say 3-letter agencies are using his bags because they've tested them and they know that they're good. Okay, so will my watch burn out? Will my phone burn out? What about things that aren't plugged in like this? That would never be plugged in generally during the day because I'm using it. Toast gone?
So it depends. This is one of those questions that we get a lot, and it's kind of a myth. We'll use cell phones as an example. So to start with your question, most things will be destroyed, but this is a unique thing because this has some forms of shielding already built into it. This has EMI requirements inside of it because of what it is. So because of its footprint and because it does have some forms of shielding, there's a low likelihood this will be destroyed, although some will be destroyed. So there's no certainty that this will absolutely be damaged. However, you're not going to be able to make a phone call with it because we know that the cell phone towers will be destroyed, but there is a chance this might survive. And that's, it's a big myth out there because every EMP movie ever is the cell phone immediately gets destroyed. And I'm like, it could, but it's probably more likelihood that it's going to turn off and then maybe turn back on. It's also the same with some laptops. There is, although they can be destroyed, if they're not plugged in, there is a likelihood they might still survive. So it really depends on whether it's EMP, super EMP, what the voltages are, what the induction level is into that device. There's a lot of variables associated to this.
All right. So before I start really diving into these questions, we're dealing with a lot of things right now, okay, that are affecting our lives.
Right.
And we're going to have to kind of prioritize, our life and, what are we going to prepare for next, right? What it really is the likelihood of an EMP strike, intentional, right? Or a coronal mass ejection or a solar flare.
Sure. Well, it's tough to speculate. I think that EMP is a low likelihood, but obviously it'd be highly devastating. So it's hard to say if an adversary is going to use one or not, but we do know the technologies exist. And countries have threatened the United States with regular EMP plus super EMP, and now they have hypersonic platforms to be able to deliver them quickly. So it is a huge threat, but to guess the whether it's going to happen it's pretty tough. I'm sure there's analysts out there that might have an actual number tied to it. But what I can tell you with certainty is we are due for another large solar flare, coronal mass ejection. It's not to scare people. It's just that they normally occur every 100 to 150 years. We've already had a couple near misses. It might occur 100 years from now. It might occur 10 days from now, but we do know eventually it's going to happen again. That it's a matter
sort
of
like the people in California waiting for the big one, right? It's going to happen sometime. We just don't have a date and time for it.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
And it's not to scare people. It's just so they're aware. Yep.
Right. All right. So being a preparedness-minded person, I'm thinking prioritizing. I only have so much money to spend, right? So I need to make sure I've got food. That's high priority. I need to make sure I have a water filtration system. I need to make sure that I have shelter, that I have self-protection. So that's kind of how I'm prioritizing where I need to spend my funds on. it's hard to say there's an urgency to any one of those because they all can happen. But if I had to go, if I had to have one first, it would certainly be a water filter, because I don't care if I got $1 million worth of food storage. If I'm drinking tainted water,
Right.
I'm in bad shape.
Mhm.
So water filter, food storage, protection, shelter. Then I would probably put in EMP. That being said, I have all of these, right?
Mhm.
And that's why, I have you on here is to let people know that this is a real thing. We don't know when it's going to happen. When it happens, you can't do anything about it. It's going to happen, and you need to be prepared before it happens. So if you have funds, do that. Take care of it now. Speaking of funds, one of the questions that was put in was from CPR Training Minneapolis. Says, Faraday cages for small items. If I get an EMP protector for my home, so an EMP shield for my home, what good is it if the entire area grid is down? Does it come back with repairs or what? So I'm
Sure.
talk about and let's kind of weave that in with Anti-Celsius, who wrote, will lining a wooden box with aluminum foil provide any real protection from an EMP? I have batteries, extra cell phone, shortwave radio in such a box. Are they safe? That's a great question. One of my very first videos on my YouTube channel was me building a Faraday cage out of a garbage can. All right. Is that a waste of time or is...
Yeah.
Tell me what.
So I'll start with the first half of the question, which was kind of why put it on my house? The grid's going to be down. This is one of the most common questions we get all the time. There's many different reasons, so I'll just cover them kind of quickly here. The first is we'll use the solar flare coronal mass ejection scenario. There is a likelihood, like we just discussed, that this is going to occur and potentially could occur at anywhere from a small to medium level up to Carrington event. But there is a chance, pretty decent chance, that it's going to impact the grid. But in this scenario, the grid could probably come back up in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or 5 weeks. Even 3 months later, the grid comes back up. I would not want to be the person who now has to wait another 2 or 3 years to fix my house when I could be back up and running the second the grid is back up and running. Does that make sense? So there's that scenario is very likely that the grid could go down. It's happened a couple times in the past with small size solar coronal mass ejections. So that's number one, is obviously when the grid comes back up, you're immediately back up and running. Number two is lightning. So Emp Shield protects against EMP, solar flares, lightning, and power surges. So having this on your home just as a general protection of your investment is critically important. We guarantee lightning protection as well. So it's very important there. And then number three, and this is a big one, and it's kind of like you, David. So you have a solar system, and I'd say 60 to 70% of our customers have one, if not multiple, backup power systems. That's where Emp Shield really shines, is because if you protect your home, you protect your solar system, and you protect your generator, you're up and running like nothing even happened. Your whole system is protected, and you're still producing power via the sun or from a fuel source through a generator. And so that's very important. And I know the question comes up a lot because a lot of people who maybe are just getting into being prepared or maybe hadn't thought it through, but if you have a backup power system and you're protected, that's a very good thing. And that's going to keep you kind of more towards your normal life, as opposed to going back to the 1800s with no power.
Okay. So before I forget, and before we get to the metal garbage can or the wooden box with aluminum in it.
Yeah.
I have a permanent solar panel system on my house, and just let people know I have Emp Shield. I've done videos showing my Emp Shield setup with that. And so I am perfectly comfortable with that setup. If the grid goes down for whatever, if an EMP or coronal mass ejection, I really feel protected, and I am going to be living life as normal as you can after that kind of event, because obviously it's going to be really affecting my neighbors too.
Right.
So that was, after I get the other essential items taken care of, that was a really high priority for me. And that's for my permanent system. Now I also have a portable solar powered system. It's it's got stackable batteries. It's, I can take it outside, plug in the panels. Do we need to protect those? Do we need an Emp Shield on that? Do we put that in a Faraday bag? What would your recommendation be kind of on a portable system?
Yeah, so number one, it does need to be protected. If you're going to be planning on using it, you're going to want it to be protected. What that really comes down to is, are you keeping it employed like with a panel all the time, or are you just using it when you need to? Because if you're only pulling it out when you need it, it's probably better to build your own Faraday cage and keep it in there and then pull it out when you need it. If you're running the system daily, then you would certainly, Emp Shield would be the way to go, because then you can use the system as, if that's your plan, consistently, and it's still protected. And we do have devices for specific portable systems. And then obviously this is all voltage dependent. So you could, for the most part, we are able to protect those as well. But yeah, in the scenario like yours, it might be better and more importantly, more cost effective to build your own Faraday cage, which kind of ties into the second part of that question. And the answer is yes. So you can absolutely build your own Faraday cage. In fact, we do have a video. It's how to build a Faraday cage for $5 in 5 minutes. It's on our Facebook. People are welcome to go look at that, but you can use things like a trash can. You can use aluminum foil, although we do recommend using multiple layers of foil, and you don't want to be touching it. There's certain things you need to do. But what's important here is, one, the awareness that you can do it yourself and you can save money. If a Faraday box or a Faraday cage is all you need, I recommend go do it. There's a bazillion videos out on YouTube. The most important thing is just make sure that the video you're watching is from a trusted source, and make sure that whatever you're doing, it has to be 100% enclosed. That's what makes a Faraday cage effective, is because nothing can get into it. So if you've got an open seam, energy can still enter the Faraday cage. It's not as effective as being completely sealed.
Okay, so after this interview's over, I will go find your video on your YouTube channel, and I will link it below this video so people don't have to be looking all over the place for it. So I'll do that.
Okay.
Okay, so you can make your own Faraday cage, but I can't put everything I own in a Faraday cage because I'm using it every day. So that's where having a whole house protection comes in.
That's right.
So I have my Emp Shield hooked up to my fuse box, circuit breaker box in my house.
Yeah, your breaker box.
And when it came, it had end user installation instructions like, hey, a homeowner can do this. I have a friend who's an electrician, so he came over and did it for me just because I'm a little skittish of electricity. But is this something that people can install themselves, or would you recommend having an electrician do it?
So if it's a vehicle model, anybody can do it. It's not dangerous. We've had 80-year-old women, we've had kids do it on video. That's okay. For the home, we highly recommend an electrician. Number one, and most importantly, I don't want anybody to get hurt. It's very important. And also you want to make sure to maintain that warranty on the device, because it's got an industry leading warranty. You want to make sure it's installed correctly. With that being said, though, I am aware of a very large portion of our customers that do end up doing it themselves. So people do it. It's very simple to install, but we do recommend an electrician does it for safety reasons. But it does install like most other type 2 surge protectors.
Yeah, in my situation, we needed to get a new circuit breaker. And so we went down to Home Depot with him, and he picked it up and he put it in, and I was there watching everything. But that way, when it was done, I knew it was done correctly. Yes. And I'm red, green, colorblind. You don't want me painting your house or doing your wiring. So I knew it was done, and I could sleep well at night. So that's good. All right. So let's get into some more questions here. Charlene, where my fear is that hubby and I will be separated when an Emp happens. Due to medical issues, he can't walk long distances, so he relies on a vehicle. So this is a vehicle question here. Is there anything that we can do to make sure his car is drivable, Faraday cage or something like that? And that's when we're talking about the Emp Shield for your vehicles.
Yes, sir. So the vehicle model is by far our most popular model. It's huge. And I actually would recommend for anybody looking for EMP protection, start with your vehicle. Because this is one of those things where after the E1 and the E2, the majority of vehicles are no longer, modern day vehicles are no longer going to be functional. So having EMP Shield in there and having the ability even just to go from point A to point B could be the difference between life and death. And the question, the wording of that question, I like it because it highlights a few things. So number one, we get this all the time. Well, what good is it? You're not going to have any gas. You won't be able to go to a gas station. That's possible that, obviously the gas stations aren't going to function, but even that one tank of gas, or obviously you can siphon gas, or you might have your own gas storage on your property. But if you have one tank of gas, it still could be the difference between life and death. I mean, with most vehicles, you can get 200 or 300 miles on a tank. So it's another thing just to kind of keep in your mind, but always keep your tank topped off because, if your husband or your wife works 100 miles away or 50 miles away and maybe has a heart condition, and like us, it's the winter and there's a blizzard outside, getting home could be pretty tough. So,
we always keep our vehicles at least half full. We just agreed on that decades ago between my wife and me, and they're always at least half full. So we're good for a couple 100, 200, 300 miles on half a tank in our vehicles. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you have one EMP shield for vehicles. It works on all vehicles. Are there some vehicles that would not need it?
So there are, if you have an older vehicle, so older, like probably 1970 or earlier, those are generally okay. There's not enough in there to really be worried about it. It's more modern day vehicles that you're going to have an issue with.
I'm smiling because I'm thinking about the AMC Hornet that I bought.
Yeah, there you go.
Way back in the 70s. Yeah, I don't think anything would stop that. It was so ugly it would scare away an EMP. Okay, so something else. So I've got a 2005 it's my everything truck. I use it around here on the property, lumber and sawdust and sand and so forth. So that's probably too new. I would probably want an EMP shield on that.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
Very good. And then we've got a new Traverse. I open up the hood, it's like I'm lost.
Right.
I can't do anything in this thing. So yeah, for sure, that's totally all electronics. Okay, good. So yes, there is something you can do, and the EMP shield is that. Okay, the vehicle one. All right, excellent.
Sure.
All right, so this is Q Sarah posted this question. Thank you, LDS Prepper. Question: I purchased an EMP shield for my home. Smart, good. The electrician I used to have it installed, very good, said it's a one and done device, meaning if an EMP hits, it will most likely stop all damage. However, after that, if another one hits, I have no protection. Is that true? What do you say?
So the answer is no. So we've done military certified testing. The first round was at a place called Keystone Compliance. We actually hit the device with 50,000 volts per square meter over 40 times, and the device had zero degradation. So with EMP, yeah, it's very robust, very fast too. With EMP, it will be able to take multiple EMPs. It is important also, this is something important to know, but you actually can't have one EMP right after another. You have to wait for the atmosphere to recharge. But if for some reason somebody got squirrely and said, we're going to do it again, like a week later, it would still protect you. With that being said, though, when it comes to a direct lightning strike, the EMP shield, because of the amount of direct energy from a direct lightning strike, it's designed to kill itself to protect your house. So it will die if you take a direct lightning strike. It's designed to. That's why we have the program that we have. So it's $50. We send you a new unit. You're back up and running. But no way,
really? So hold it. Your warranty is if you get hit by lightning, you send us $50 and you're getting a brand new one?
That's correct. And we protected your house.
That's awesome.
I wish I could show you. We have a wall of fame over here, but it's got about 50 EMP shields from this year that we protected all of the houses. They send us the old one. Awesome. We send them a new one. Yeah.
And
It's
don't you have
really
a warranty, a guarantee if any electronics is damaged? What's that warranty or guarantee?
Yeah. So, okay. So it's actually one of the best in the world. I have yet to find another warranty like ours, and I'll just quickly explain why. And I challenge anybody to look up what I'm about to tell you. If you go to any mainstream surge protector and look at their warranty, there's a couple things that you're going to see that are out of place. Number one, the majority of them will probably say they don't cover acts of God, lightning. Many of them will say that they don't cover over voltage. That's a power surge. A couple of them will say that you have to use your home's insurance before their insurance will pay out. Okay, so those are all indicators to me that it's not the greatest. And this isn't to talk bad about another company. That there is some good regular surge protectors that don't do EMP out there. They don't guarantee.
They're just hedging their bet there.
That's right. We guarantee lightning protection, and we back it up. If the way ours works is in the very first paragraph, we say we will protect you from lightning. Period. We will protect you from any over voltage. We guarantee it in the warranty. And if for any reason our device does not do its job, we fix whatever was destroyed or damaged from period. That's the way ours works. Mm-hmm. We've protected hundreds of houses to date.
That's so awesome. I mean, I'm surrounded with, everything that would blow up in here
so actually
speaking of that,
so here's a good one. If you don't mind, David, this just happened 2 weeks ago. North of us, we're in Kansas, a water pumping station got hit by lightning. It had a 3-phase EMP shield, and because of the EMP shield, 60,000 people were still able to get water. And if they didn't have it, the water would have been down for a couple days, a week, maybe more. So just a real world scenario. Now their whole county's looking to get EMP shield and everything because of that one event. So,
yeah. Well, I'm glad that someone else is testing it for real life. And I know that this makes me feel more comfortable on my install here, but yeah,
mm-hmm.
I'm not the smartest guy, but I don't need to know how a watch works to be able to tell time, right?
Right.
If it works, it works. And mm-hmm. I understand something that it clamps down really fast. And so it stops the surge from coming in or absorbs the surge as it comes in. I don't need to understand all that detail stuff. I just need to know that my toaster is going to work so I can make some toast tomorrow with my homemade wheat bread, right? So I did want to get a question back. So if I do have this portable solar generator and it's running, okay, so and an EMP happens, so that means I've got it outside, get the solar panels running, wires coming into the house, running stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need an EMP shield on that while it's running, or what's the situation with that?
You do. And so whether it's a portable solar system or like you have a larger scale solar system, a solar panel is designed to collect energy. It's a huge collector of energy. And so what's going to happen is, even if you only had one panel or two, you've got roughly 10,000 square feet of copper trace inside of each panel. So that panel is going to induce a significant amount of energy, which is going to find its way very quickly into whatever that portable solar system is, whether it's Energy or Goal Zero or name the company. There's a couple of really good ones out there. And so you're going to want to have protection if you're using the system. If you don't, the system will be destroyed.
So I do recommend a website. It's actually my son's website. Go to ldsprepper.com/Titan. And he has, I think, 18 different portable solar generators that he's purchased and tested and has charts and comparisons on them. And so if you're looking for a portable solar generation, just want to get information or make a purchase there. And if he doesn't sell it, he sends you a link, gives you a link to where you can get it, is ldsprepper.com/Titan. So on my solar panels, I have a surge protector. It has a blue light on it, night hawk or night something.
Okay.
I think it's supposed to protect from a lightning strike.
Mm-hmm.
Would that clamp down? And so would that be good enough for my permanent system, or do I need an EMP shield behind that too?
Yeah. So if you're No, I don't know what the device is, but I would look at what the capabilities are. If it doesn't guarantee lightning protection, and that's a fear, EMP Shield's obviously the way to go. But when it comes to EMP protection, I'm not aware of any other device out there that's gone through the actual military certified testing that can do the E1, the E2, and the E3. So if you want the EMP protection, that's important to have, then EMP Shield's certainly the way to go. And the EMP market's huge, and it's so important to get it. We're trying to protect as many Americans as possible. And, I don't know if we mentioned this before, but, after an EMP, 90% of the population will die within 1 year because of many different things, but primarily because of a lack of clean running water, a lack of food, and then obviously a myriad of other things that are tied to that lifestyle change that you went from comfy to now, the end of the world. But that's a lot of people to die. And so it's very important to get some form of protection, at least on your vehicle, so you can use your vehicle as a tool to get from point A to point B.
Yeah. Yeah. And after the hurricane in Texas, one of my neighbors, they just piled everybody in the car and they left because they didn't have anything running at home, right? There's no electricity, no water, nothing. So they just left. If that were an EMP and they didn't have an EMP shield, they couldn't leave.
Right. Yep. You'd be stuck.
Yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely. Okay. Some more questions here. With electronics being subject to damage by an EMP, transistor, diodes, LEDs, etc., will LED flashlights and LED house lights work? Great question.
Ooh, good question. The lights themselves.
So
we know that. I know the answer. Yeah.
Okay. So incandescent light, is not susceptible to an EMP because there's no electronics in it, no resistors, no capacitors, anything like that.
Yeah.
If I've got LED lights plugged in, will those LED lights work if I don't have an EMP shield in the house or my LED flashlight, right?
Right. Well, so if you have a modern LED flashlight that has anything in it, like transistors, resistors, or diodes, that might be destroyed. To be honest, I'm not familiar enough with how an LED works to tell you, but I could certainly get an answer and we could post it down below after the show. I'll give our engineer team a call. I don't want to give the wrong answer here. What I can tell you is if you have EMP Shield in the house, they will be protected. That's a new one for me. I don't know the answer, but we'll find out.
They'll be protected if they're plugged in.
That's right. Yep. As long as it's connected to the electrical system with protection, it's protected. Now, for the flashlight that's not connected to the electrical system, you're going to want to put that, into some form of a Faraday bag or cage. So,
yeah.
It's
in my light and fire Faraday bag is where mine is. Okay, so Susan asks, Susan Foster, would an EMP damage solar panels and render them useless? We talked about that they do collect that energy, but will it just fry everything or will it be working afterwards?
No, so most panels will not be damaged by an EMP. It's got a photovoltaic coating. It's designed to collect energy. Where the real damage comes in is from all of that energy finding its way into your charge controller or inverter. That's why on solar systems, the first point, the installation point is at the entry point of the charge controller or inverter, because that's where that energy is going to actually cause the damage.
Yep. Okay. Very good. Now there is a diode or resistor or something in the back of a solar panel. I guess that's there so the power doesn't go backwards at night back into the. Is that going to be damaged? That's pretty much toast.
There is going to be some panels out there that can take damage. So when I'm kind of referring to just a very basic solar panel, we've got data that shows that it's not going to be damaged, but there is more modern solar panels that have transistors, resistors, diodes, silicon arsenide, also some that have micro inverters directly connected to the panel. And in those scenarios, they could be damaged. So it really, and this is where there's no 100% answer on anything. You have to know exactly what you're looking at and say, that
brings up a good point.
Yeah, we are going to be doing, we have a plan to be doing some testing on the impact of solar panels at a certain point, with actually a government testing facility, but we don't have a date on it yet, but that's something that we've been interested in knowing the exact impacts of as well. And so at a certain point, we'll be doing a study on that, but we're not there yet.
Okay. So just let people help people clarify. You call it a traditional, maybe old solar panel system. You have the solar panels, the wires coming into an inverter and charge controllers, and that's how I'm set up here.
Right.
And my inverters and charge controllers are behind my EMP shields.
Right.
However, most solar companies that come knocking on your door are going to be putting in a grid tied system. And the most economical way for them to do that is to put micro inverters on the back of each panel. Those would all be in front of an EMP shield, and they would not be protected. So when you're looking, I'm just telling my subscribers here, when you're looking at solar, just make sure, hey, does this have micro inverters? When the grid turns off, actually, when the grid turns off, there's no power coming from those solar panels anyway, because there has to be power coming from the grid.
Right.
And so I opted for really an off-grid system with the inverter charge controller in the basement, and now they're all behind the EMP shield. You were going to say something?
No, that's exactly what I recommend too. And it's not to say we couldn't protect microinverters. It would just get very expensive for the owner of the system. And so it's more one of those, a microinverter is usually $20 to $40. It's almost cheaper to go buy a second set of those and put them into a Faraday bag, than it would be to put an EMP shield on every single one. It would be much more cost effective. So that's what we normally recommend.
Well, I can't even imagine doing, I've got, I don't know how many panels, 40 panels on my roof, and I'd have to take each one of them up and remove that and put in a new one. Wow, I would just get it.
Yeah, it would not be.
Okay. So Dave Faves says, looking forward to this. My question, would a shipping container act as a Faraday cage and protect electronics? Will the cables, wiring running through walls be damaged too? So we addressed the cables and wiring. So on a big shipping container, I have a friend who actually had put a good grounding rod on his, 6 feet down in the ground. If a shipping container could act as a Faraday cage, two-part question, can it, and would you put a grounding rod on it?
So the answer to the question is a shipping container is pretty darn close to a Faraday cage. There's only a couple places and it's really just the seals of the doors that some energy may be able to get through, but it's still going to be pretty highly effective. It's not 100%, but it's basically a big metal box. And if you were to find a way to get a complete seal, it would serve as a Faraday cage. With that being said, I actually have a cabin I built out of a shipping container, and I do run mine to a grounding rod that's 6 feet in the ground as well. But that's because I've got solar and I've got everything else, and having good grounding is incredibly important, not just to protect your equipment, but also for the EMP shield to function correctly. You also need to have a decent ground for solar systems as well. So it's important too. So I guess the answer is yes on that part.
So a house is already grounded.
That's right.
So that's good. Ham radios should be grounded.
Yes, sir.
But so does the EMP shield, for example, for a ham radio that isn't grounded work?
So it does, just not quite as well. Having grounding is important to be able to shunt the energy somewhere. With that being said, the device can still function, but we talked about how you're able to take 40 EMPs, 40 plus is what we tested to. I'm pretty sure that number is not going to be the same if you don't have anywhere to put the energy. It's just going to take all of that energy and do it basically like it would do with lightning, where it would sacrifice itself to protect the system. But having grounding is why it's able to do what it can do multiple times and making it robust and fast.
Okay, so on a portable solar generator, that's not grounded. It's it's a standalone unit.
Yep.
Would your DC generator EMP shield work on that? Just maybe not as well if it's not grounded, because I don't think it's made to be grounded.
Nope, it would work. You could run a ground to it, but in fact, we have some models. I've got it here. I can't show you because of an NDA, but we have models that are in line without grounding. those models are designed to do its job, but they are single use as opposed to multi-use, if that makes sense, because there's nowhere to put the energy.
Okay, very good. We got 3 questions here.
Yeah.
And maybe we've touched on some of this. This is from L. Benek. Will an EMP attack destroy items that are not even plugged into the electrical grid? Example, toaster, can opener, hair dryer. Got to have the hair dryer. iPad, non-charging cell phone. So if they're not plugged into the grid, they're sitting here on my dining room table and I'm eating dinner and there's an EMP or coronal mass ejection. I think we kind of addressed this, but if you just say that again.
Yeah, absolutely. So anything that's an antenna is going to be inducing these freed electrons. So yes, there is a high likelihood that most of those things, if they have transistors, resistors, diodes, or finite connections, will be destroyed.
Okay. And then Mitchell Barlow asks, I think it was Atlantis Shelters, and they're really big in the prepper niche where they build
Atlas.
Atlas Shelters. They're probably like the biggest in the world right now, building emergency bunkers type thing. I think it was Atlas Shelters that had a gentleman on their YouTube channel talking about radiologic detection equipment. The way he was talking, they were the only ones producing such items. That may have been a sales pitch. But my question is, there are many companies offering such equipment, and are they affordable? I don't really know what he's talking about. Maybe you do.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess number one, Ron from Atlas is actually an affiliate of Emp Shield, and he builds some of the best bunkers in the world. If you haven't checked out his channel, I do recommend most people go check it out. At least
Ron's just a cool guy.
It's so
just
cool.
A down to earth, nice guy.
Yeah. And so what they're referring to is, like Geiger counters, things to detect radiation and so forth. Right. I don't know about the company they're referring to, but I'm pretty sure you can buy fairly affordable detection, like Geiger counters. I mean, even in the military, we had them a long time ago. So I think that's a fairly common thing. I don't know what the price would be, but it doesn't really tie to EMP, because EMP, like we mentioned in the beginning, is happening 250 to 300 miles above the earth. And this is good for people to know, is there's not going to be a radiological impact from an EMP. And that's a big myth. People are like, well, I'm worried about the blast. And I'm like, you shouldn't be. You're not even going to see it. It's happening so far away. So I guess that's very important for people to know.
So there's no nuclear fallout.
Right. That's right.
Yes. So they're not detonating a bomb a mile up or 300 feet up off the ground. Okay.
Right.
All right. So Mark LeBaron asks, sounds like these might already be on the list, but how would an EMP affect solar panels? We got that. Optimizers, inverters, batteries, if you have them, and other specific components, and steps to mitigate or prepare. So I think we've addressed those really good. And so that's a good segue. And I just want to share my screen here. And all right. So if you're on the internet and you want to find out more about Emp Shield, go to ldsprepper.com/EMP Shield. That's my affiliate link. That automatically puts the coupon code right in your shopping cart for you. So I don't even have to enter anything here. So if I'm over here shopping, you said your vehicle is the most popular system. So I'm going to click on vehicle here. And there's just one vehicle item. So it's really simple. You got a vehicle, you want to protect it, you add it to cart. So I'm going to add that to cart here. I already have one, but I mean here at my home, but let's take a look at it. So it's normally $409. Right now it's $389. But if you come down here, there's with your Christmas sale, you get an additional $20 off of that. And on top of that, you get the LDS Prepper discount. So it's a $70. Let's see, that's $80 off the normal price by using my discount code there, and it's automatically put it in for you. I didn't have to enter that in at all. But when I was on your website earlier today, I added that to the cart. I have one EMP for my vehicle, and I have 2 vehicles, so I need to get another one. And so if we're going to do, let's see, I need one for my radio. So I would need to get, what is this? This is 500 watts. I'm never going to use 500 watts.
Yeah, they're big.
200 watts. Okay, I'm going to add that to my cart. And this was what was really surprising to me. So there's my 2 items in my cart. I came back to my cart and I got a $60 discount. It went from 20 to 230s. And then it gave me $100. So it's $50 per unit. I didn't realize that.
Yes, sir.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I'm going to use my own code. Is it okay if I use my own code?
Okay. No, that's okay. You can do that too. And I with all of the things that's currently going on with some of our adversaries, I won't use the keywords because I don't want your video to get tagged by the algorithms, but I'm sure most people are aware about who our adversaries are. And there's so much going on right now with hypersonic testing and super EMP weapons that I really am trying to get as much protection out to people as possible, because it does seem like things are starting to heat up. And so that's what this Christmas sale is for, is, you get it for yourself, get it for your loved ones. Giving protection and peace of mind is, in my mind, the best present that you can give for yourself and for your family. And so hopefully this sale is able to help people get what they need to get protection.
Yeah, we started that, I don't know, 20, 30, at least 20 years ago. We just started giving all our kids preparedness items. I mean, that's what we give. When we go to a friend's daughter's wedding reception, they get a food storage box from us. I mean, full of, cans of food storage. And so, yeah, we give preparedness items for Christmas all the time. That just makes sense. All right, so we've got home protection. So here on the home protection, we're talking about AC protection here. And the one that I have on mine is this one right here, because I had a flush panel. And then if you want to, if your box sticks out from the wall, then you get the one here on the left, right? Okay, so
yes,
breaker with flush wall. Okay, and so you have the vehicle, we've got the RV. Now, I don't have an RV, can you? But I know a lot of my listeners do. How does this RV one work?
Yeah, so we call it the RV model, but you can actually use it for pretty much any AC application. And it's basically protecting a single phase in an electrical system. As an example, if I was to plug it into the wall here, it would protect that phase of this system. Although it's only half, because you got L1 and L2. It's the same thing in an RV. So when you plug it in, it's protecting that single phase inside the RV. And then for those who have like a lot of fifth wheel type, some of the larger RVs, you could use a regular 120 240 Emp Shield as well, because some of those have L1 and L2 and not just a single phase. So.
Okay, so I'm not familiar with this connector here. How would you plug that into an RV? It looks like
it's a 3-prong connector. It's just a weird angle in that picture.
Oh, so you're saying you just plug this into an outlet?
Plug it into the wall.
Oh, okay. Oh, and because everything is tied together.
That's right.
And it's protecting it. Got it. And that's why you have this multiple outlet here.
So that's just for convenience. This will protect the entire electrical system. You don't have to plug into that. We just gave extra outlets just in case if people wanted to use them.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you just plug this into an outlet anywhere in the RV and everything's good. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I do not have an RV, but I'm going to add that to my cart, and because I want to see a $150 discount. Yes, I got a $150 discount, and now I got a $30 discount. Okay, good. Now, I didn't want to get too deep into the weeds here, because we didn't talk a lot about the technology, but you can come over here and you can read all about your warranties we had discussed earlier, how you tested them. I think this is your video library here. Frequently asked questions. I've gone through that. A lot of really good information in there. So right now, with your Christmas sale on, not only do they get the reduced price here, but they also get the Christmas discount and they get the LDS Prepper discount.
Sure.
I hope does that go through December 31st? Is that when that Christmas is over, or is it December 24th?